Welcome to the Cal Park Bros podcast. I'm your host, Terrence, and with me is my co host, Jason, calling in for the Batcave in Indianapolis. Jason, how are you, my good man?
I'm doing pretty good, despite the fact that I was hoping to wear red today, but a certain person's costume changed that. But here we are, rocking yellow, as you guys will see on Monday. But hey, man, doing good. Always good to get to Tuesday so we can record another one of these episodes. You know what's funny, Terrence? I was thinking the other day that as much as I like recording, I love editing. I really do. It's really weird. I don't know, but so I'm ready to record this so I can start editing. So here we go.
Maybe that's your love language. Thank you for listening. This is episode 39 of the Cal Park Bros podcast. For the uninitiated, Cal Park Bros is the podcast to hear. We have a weekly podcast for fans of culture, current events, sports, life, and entertainment.
And as always, we're your hosts, Terrence and Jason. And every single Thursday, we bring to you a brand new episode where we discuss the current events of the day, sports, and the athletes we love.
And even some of the athletes we loathe. No matter the topic, you can expect a brutally honest and fun exchange of snark while learning through the lens of our 30 years of friendship that originated in Calumet Park, Illinois.
Folks, more of the Cal Park Bros, and just to enjoy the goodness and the greatness of us. Make sure you're connecting with us on all social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all that stuff like that. For more behind the scenes of the show and just to engage with us every single day. But definitely don't forget that the Cal Park Bros are available to listen and subscribe for free wherever you listen to podcasts.
Like us, love us, share us, follow us. And folks, if you like us, hell, why wouldn't you?
That's right, folks. When it comes to the Cal Park Bros, make sure you live it, love it, do it. And there it is.
There you go. Well, I know for one thing, guys, we're still having a better week than Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace of the Chicago Bears, aren't we, Jason?
Well, we haven't been fired yet, so that helps. We still have a show, so that helps.
Yes, we have not been fired by our adoring fans. But yeah, the the jig, as they say, is up, and Black Monday is upon us. And Matt Nagy, um, really not a surprise by a lot of folks, was ceremoniously put out on his keister, out of his misery, for being head coach of the Chicago Bears. Um, but I think the organization, the McCaskey family, knew that that wasn't going to be enough, so they had to do the next hard thing, which was also fire the GM Ryan Pace as well. So, Jason, what are your reactions to number one this season, uh, and number two, the way that Nagy was almost fired and then finally fired, and then just the Pace fallout as well. What are your thoughts as the fallout of the Nagy firing has commenced?
Well, first off, regarding the season, I kind of had to remind myself what were kind of the thoughts of the fans and the experts when it comes to the Bears 2021 season. Regards to like what was the record going to be? Were they supposed to be good, bad, blah blah blah, whatever. And so I had to kind of dig back into the archives that is the internet to kind of see what some of the experts were thinking when it comes to what they thought of the Bears. And I saw a pretty good mix, and that's going from a range of Chicago sports, NBC, CBS Sports, Sports Kita, Sports Illustrated, things like that. It was kind of a mixture of a range between they all either having not us, sorry, having the Bears as a 7-win team, an 8-win team, and I even saw some that said we were going to be a 9-win team. Now, obviously, that was so long ago, way back in like September, and here we are in January, and that 9 wins seems like a what were you thinking kind of a thing. And some of those people that had us, winning 9 games was thinking we are going to beat the Packers twice. Um, you know, but obviously that didn't happen. Some hopes were we are going to beat the Vikings twice. Obviously that didn't happen. Um, so yeah, man. The season for me personally, I'm not going to say it was a disappointment per se because I didn't really have that many high hopes for the team. Obviously, the big highlight was we had the rookie quarterback, and it was all about when was he going to start playing? Was he was going to take the reins? And I think that happened a lot earlier than some people were thinking. Um, Now, for him, the season probably didn't go very well, but it's a rookie quarterback, so what are you gonna expect? He was probably on par with some of the other ones. If nothing else, the O line didn't help him a lot, especially in one game in particular versus the Browns. But the overall, the Bears went 6-11. There were only 7 teams that finished worse than the Bears: the Panthers, Jets, Giants, Texans, Lions, and Jaguars. So I'm sure any football fan that heard those team names and followed the season, I'm sure is well aware of the fact that hey, that's a pantheon of teams, for lack of a better word, that finished worse than the Bears. A little bit more perspective: there's 32 teams in the NFL. Over half of them finished with an actual winning record, 18 to be exact. The Bears were not one of them. So that little perspective there. I have certain grades. I'll give the team a little later in the segment, but overall, can't be say I was disappointed when it comes to Nagy and Pace. I think pretty much every fan everywhere knew, in some cases, were hoping that Nagy and Pace would get fired. Now, obviously, that hinged on this season what happened because if they want, personally, and I think I told you before that short of the team getting to the Super Bowl, those two are going to get fired. They didn't have to win the Super Bowl. If they got there, they probably would have saved their jobs. Clearly, they missed the playoffs. That wasn't going to happen. So in my head, I was looking forward to, okay, are they going to get fired on Black Monday? And also, like you just said earlier, they certainly were. Um, so I can't say I'm surprised. I actually was reading some articles earlier, and I've forgotten the fact that the ownership kind of put it out there at the end of last year that this is going to be, up in the air when it comes to them getting fired, when it comes to being over their heads. So, so tough. Sucks from Nagy to kind of had it over your head going into the season. But one funny thing that I found quite surprising after all all the flames that Matt Nagy had to deal with while he was there, Matt Nagy actually finished his career with the Bears as a coach with a winning record. Did you realize that, Terrence? He actually had a winning record with the team, 34-31. Obviously,
Well,
not, obviously that's not great.
it's not enough to say your job in this NFL.
Well, I agree, but I'm just saying though, as much heat as he caught over the years, you would think he would have been a much worse record coach. And again, I didn't think that either. But 34-31, only two in the playoffs is what it is. But yeah, like you said, not enough to keep your job, obviously. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, Jason. First off, thanks for kicking off with some of those great thoughts. Here's what I think. I think if by miracle Justin Fields just lights the world on fire and the Bears had like 10, 11 wins and they actually get into the playoffs, there might have been a snowball's chance in hell for Matt Nagy to keep this job. But time and time again, Matt Nagy showed that there were times when it would have felt like, oh, so you just basically not trying to keep this job or not trying to keep this team in this game. Just stubbornly refusing to run the fucking ball. Like that that is the things that I think a lot of Bears fans found infuriating is that you're not even giving your team a chance to compete. It's never a good look when you got to hand over the offensive play calling duties and you were hired to be the offensive quarterback guru guy. And I remembered, 4 years ago when, people were incredibly high on Matt Nagy, that people were saying, oh, well, these aren't the guys that, really fit his system. And I always think that's a crock of shit because it's like, listen, whatever system you're running, you're gonna make the best out of it with the horses that you got, so to speak. And I find that he definitely got kind of found out after year one, right?
Well, that was the best season. I mean, they that was the best season. They got to the playoffs. That was one of the 2 years they got to the playoffs. I don't want to go too much into what happened in the playoffs that year, but yeah, that was the best year, and we all had high hopes going forward, all of us. Uh, but again, obviously, it was what it was.
Yeah, I think if anything, he's not really going to get credit. He didn't really get credit for that second playoff run because they kind of backed in.
8-8,
they
8-8. So yeah, exactly.
yeah they does 8-8 doesn't instill confidence. Um, and when you back into the playoffs like that and you don't make any actual noise in the playoffs, you're not going to get credit for it. Um, and I think what it was, you know, there were just too many bad losses and there was too many head scratching play calls to the point where I don't know if he ever lost the locker room, but he damn sure lost the fan base. And I think for someone like Matt Nagy, for a guy that didn't actually get to pick his quarterback, probably doesn't help that Mahomes shows up and says, "Hey, you could have had me, but your GM is out here bullshitting." All it did was just emphasize what could have been.
Well, I'm definitely not going down that road on this show because I think that's a whole different subject that's been overblown, overhyped, and no need to go into it today.
Why? No,
No,
I'm
no,
trying.
no, no, not gonna start. Don't even try it. Nope. Not.
No, I think
No. No.
you're saying
No.
something's
No.
overblown. You got to
No.
talk
No.
about it
No.
now.
No. I don't. No, I don't. I'm not going into it. Anybody wants to talk about it can add me some other time. I'm not bringing it up on episode 39. Is what it is. Um. You know. Also, am I kind of digging around for your predictions from earlier in the year? I actually also found an article as well from Bleacher Report, or excuse me, yeah, from Bleacher Report, kind of go over some of the bold predictions for the Bears in 2021. Obviously, the bold predictions may or may not have happened. But the very first one they mentioned was the Bears would have two 1,000-yard receivers. I'm sure I don't have to tell you any numbers on that, but I think all Bear fans who watch the games could tell you that didn't happen. They had one 1,000-yard receiver in Darrell Mooney, but yeah, nothing really even close to that after that. So that didn't happen. Justin Fields will start at least 8 games of the season. That actually came true. He started 10 games, such as it is. He only threw for 1,800 yards. Obviously, not great at all. So there's that. Um, Chicago will have a winning record, but miss the playoffs. Well, they're half right. They did miss the playoffs and nowhere close to a winning record. So, although that prediction wasn't alone, like I mentioned, there were a couple others that figure we win 9 games. Yeah, no. So, um, yeah, I remember going back to week one, and after that game, I remember telling you that I was looking at the schedule that they had after that and how bleak it looked. And I remember your response was something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's funny how that works after you lose game one. Because obviously the Bears lost game one and didn't really look fantastic. And all of a sudden that schedule looked a little more bleak, you know, after that game. Now, obviously looking at their schedule, it was, now the season's over, hindsight being 2020, they had a tough schedule. But I think before game one happened, anybody who had high hopes were thinking that the Bears were going to be improving a little bit and they might be able to beat some of these teams. Hence also why people were picking us to beat the Packers and Vikings twice each, you know. So yeah, but that is very interesting. That how like I said, I didn't have that high hopes, but it's funny how much more bleak things got after week one, and it didn't really get any better at all. There might have been 1 or 2 games what they won that I was kind of surprised by, but that was really more of the fact that the team they were playing was having not a great year either. So, um, Terrence, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that I was going to talk about kind of my grades for the Bears when it comes to certain aspects of the team in the season. What just overall, what grade would you give the Bears for the 2021 season? A, B, C, D, or F? Just your personal opinion as a fan.
So we're giving out grades to coaches,
Just
execs,
just your overall grade for the 2021 Chicago Bears season.
a D.
Wow, D. Okay. So with that being said, why a D as opposed to an F? And not saying you should give them an F. Just also since you're at that close to the bottom of the scale, why a D as opposed to an F?
Why a D? Um, like just cosmically bad play calling. in key
Mm.
situations. Um,
Yeah, no wrong answer here.
the
Just your opinion.
the McCaskey press conference was as on brand as play calling for this entire year. How about that?
Okay, so real quick, I didn't plan on asking you this. When it comes to ownership, and this is just specifically with the Bears, I won't go into all sports or all teams. When it comes to the Bears, how much of a hand do you think ownership plays into what happens on the field? I mean, and I ask that because obviously they hire a GM, and the GM is the one that pulls up the players on the field. But I see always fans blaming the ownership for not doing this, that, or the other. So, how much of what happens on the field, we'll say just for 2021, is the fault of the McCaskey family?
uh, it's it's their money. Uh, they made the decision to hire Ryan Pace.
Okay.
They made the decision to hire Matt Nagy. Um,
Do was it
and
their decision
and
though to hire Nagy?
they're writing the guy a check. Yeah,
That doesn't mean
they
the other doesn't mean that their decision to hire him though.
it, it's listen. All roads lead to Virginia McCaskey, and
Yeah.
that's why you and Jason. That's why you see people kind of fed up, and for many people, it's not enough that Matt Nagy was fired. It's not enough that Ryan Pace was fired because guess what? The call's still coming from inside the house. The same schmucks that brought you the people that disappointed you for the last 5 years are now in charge of deciding who's going to be their replacements. Who's to say they've learned a damn thing in the last 5 years?
Fair enough.
There are several fans and personalities that are saying, let me get this straight. Um, George McCaskey has that weird ass press conference where he's beefing with Olin Kreutz. He's got the personality of a carrot, and he acknowledges that he is not a football guy. This does not instill confidence in this hiring process, my guy. And so, what they're deciding to do, they're going to name drop names like, "Oh, we don't worry, we got it. It's going to be an exhaustive search." I'm like, you know what's exhaustive? Getting your fucking head kicked in all these years by one Aaron Rodgers. That's exhaustive.
I could have gone the entire segment without talking about that name, and there's a reason why, which we'll discuss later. But um, so yeah. So I found an article from Bleacher Report, or excuse me, from Sports Illustrated. Excuse me. They kind of gave this is from January the 10th, so after the season was over. They kind of gave them grades for the year, and they have it broken down for this segment, whatnot of the team. They gave the passing game an F. I don't think anybody can disagree with that, and I'm sure including you, when it comes to the Bears passing game deserves an F. They were very fortunate to barely get 1,000 yard receiver. Mooney had like 1,055 yards, something like that. So he got there. Congrats. Um, some players, receivers, besides Cole Kmet, had good seasons overall. But again, whenever you're a starting quarterback for 10 of the 16 games, only has 1,800 yards, that should tell you enough alone right there. Okay. So definitely agree with that passing game getting an F. The running game, they gave it a C minus. That might be a little harsh. I mean, I know the running backs overall, the running backs average 3.92 yards a carry, which isn't horrible at all. It's not probably not the best, but it's not horrible. Um, but I guess the one comparison's sake is Justin Fields averaged 3.8 yards a carry. So um, overall, with the running game and the offense, I put it on the offensive line. I think overall they just weren't good. Made improvements, or they got better over the year. Of course, as you're playing together and experience, you're gonna get better. But overall, they were pretty trash, we'll say. Which is really kind of funny when you think about it. The fact that they drafted Justin Fields, quarterback, as opposed to drafting somebody on the O line that would have helped any quarterback that was back there, be it Dalton, Foles, or anybody else would have brought in. So bring that up again. Yes. Uh, although the pass defense, they gave it a B minus. I actually agree with this because the pass defense, shockingly, wasn't bad at all. They finished third in defensive passing. I was expecting the run defense to be the better part of the Bears defense, but I think you and I both saw that. Unfortunately, wasn't the case. It might have been some due to injury, some people not playing, whatever. You know, they got the run defense a D. I had to say that's pretty accurate. They're 24th overall when it comes to defense, so you can't really run defense, so you can't really applaud that. Special teams, they gave it a B. They didn't have really one guy as far as kick returning to really kind of hold it down, but they had a kind of a platoon effort, as they say. They did pretty well. And Cairo Santos, after what happened in the first year with a kicker who shall not be named, we'll just call him Double D and leave it at that. Cairo Santos has filled in fantastically when it comes to his kick game. I think he was is 26 to 30 when it comes to his kicks, which is very respectable, 87%. Obviously, you wanted 90, but hey, again, after that one kicker, again, who should not be named, 87% is a huge step up. So definitely, I agree with that. B, again, 90% probably would have got him an A, so can't complain there. Coaching. Well, guy got fired for a reason, so I guess the F they gave him was pretty appropriate. Would you say, Terrence, based off the diatribe you just mentioned earlier? Um, Again, keeping it on this season alone, not his overall tenure, 6-11, which again, I'll say I know he's not on the field, but still, 6-11, he's got to get an F. The game plans he had early on were horrible, considering the fact that you no longer have Mitch Trubisky. You no longer have that excuse over your head that you have a guy who can't throw, which is what it is. Now you have Justin Fields, and yet you're still in 6-11. So they also went to give grades for ownership and personnel, which basically were a D and an F, and they finished with an overall grade of a D minus for the team. So um, again, those grades pretty much are accurate. Can't really argue too much with them. The fact I will say that if in general, if your special teams is your best unit, that's probably not going to wind you up with good results for the year, and clearly, which is why they were 6-11. So, Terrence, your thoughts on the grades given in general by SI.com?
Yeah, I was just gonna wrap up the fact. Yeah, ownership absolutely has a role in this, and that's why there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on who this selection group goes with for general manager, um, and head coach. Also, if these guys are lame ducks, why the fuck do you let those guys actually decide who's going to be drafted last year? Just saying. But back to the grades. Back to the grades. Hitting the books. Yeah. Um, they could have eked out. I'm looking at the schedule. They could have eked out. They were in that San Fran game. They were in that Green Bay game. They were in the Vegas game. I think losing to Baltimore is literally when Nagy should have been fired.
Well, I mean, I'm not again.
You can't lose. You can't lose to Lamar Jackson's backup. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm again, and maybe Terrence wants to go in this boat. I do not. Again, not advocating for anybody to be fired ever, mid-season or otherwise. But I understand your point when it comes to, especially how the Ravens season turned out. Obviously when they played them, they might have still been okay. But like you said, though, we lost to Lamar Jackson's backup. Team even finished 8-9 with a losing record, so they were just about as mediocre as you. I guess not as mediocre since we only won 6 games. But yeah, I agree with you. There's a whole lot of games out there that the Bears were in where it's like, okay, which I guess you can say about any game technically. But yeah, with the Bears actually in the game, especially that Packer game, it's the second one, and that game, and the San Fran game, it's like, okay. But at the same time, though, it could always say maybe with a more experienced quarterback, we might have actually won those games. So if Fields was the one starting and playing, so
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
again, it's part of growing pains. We all were happy when we drafted Justin Fields. We all knew he was going to be a rookie this year. So
We were happy because we had no choice but to be happy.
that's
It's like
that's
being
that's that's a bunch of crap, by the way. That is because I listen. I had a choice, and I still choose not to be happy with this decision, as I just mentioned earlier. So we have a choice. You do, but again, like I said, for a lot of people, they were happy with one aspect of Justin Fields being drafted, which really had nothing to do with football, if you know what I'm saying. So, if we're being real here, Terrence Brown. Now, I'm not saying you're one of those people, but I'm just saying. But you might be. I don't know. So,
yeah. I- I'm just gonna say like yeah, them grades is accurate, and these people have been fried appropriately. Um, but that's the maddening part of the Bear season is like yo, I mean those really bad losses, those are just unacceptable, and you just gotta you can't have those. I mean, blowouts happen, but it was the creative ways in which they found to lose. Is that ultimately that's what they were judged off of? That's what I'm judging. Ownership, executives, coaches, and the players off of this year. So
bear down, Chicago Bears.
yeah, just not the bare minimum. All right. That concludes our segment on the season that wasn't for the Chicago Bears. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about Chicago Public School standoff between teachers union and Lori Lightfoot. Coming up next on Cal Park Bros.